One, I'm hitting it. Good morning or afternoon, everyone. I want to thank you all for being here today with us for our second semester rendition of the pop-up fair. The pop-up fair has been something that we've been doing for a number of years that is specifically to provide information and resource information for students, as we like to say, when things happen. We know that when going through the university system that it can be daunting at times and everything is not smooth sailing. And so that's the reason for this particular series that we call the 3 for 3 pop-up fair. Usually it is in person and a fair-like activity, but for the last couple of semesters, since we've been in the pandemic, we've opted to adapt and to move this into a discussion about programs and services either here on campus and or in the community that are of importance to our students and our UNLV community. I want to thank anyone who's listening to this or watching us via YouTube. It is being live, and so as we're talking here this afternoon, if you have any questions, please feel free to put it in the chat. We can see that if you have questions. So this afternoon, I am happy to be joined here with some of our students who have helped to shape how this program goes. And what the program is that it is a Justice Impacted initiative that has been going on for about a year. We have been working, a group of us here at the university have been working to determine and to develop programs, services, and initiatives specifically for students who are justice impacted. And so I'm really happy today to be joined with four of our students. I do expect for Sunny Gittens to be able to get on shortly. I know that she is on the other side of the country, but she will also be talking about our task force, our Justice Impacted Task Force that started about a year or so ago. So before we get into a lot, I want to start by introducing Jason Scott, who without Jason, we probably wouldn't have anything going on. We want to thank him for his perseverance and his desire to bring this to the forefront for us. Jason is a doctoral student, a doctoral candidate in the College of Liberal Arts Sociology, and he is the person who brought to members of the UNLV community, and particularly Dr. Watson, issues related to students who were justice impacted. So I want to hand it over to you, Jason, and just talk about the need for such an initiative and where we are at this point from a student perspective.
Thank you, Dr. Barlow. In 2013, I started teaching sociology classes at UNLV, and the bulk of the classes I teach are in the field of criminology. And I think one of the most important things an instructor can do is to make their students feel vulnerable enough to disclose personal information that will contribute to the conversations that take place in the classroom. And in my classroom, I noticed semester after semester, I would usually have one to a couple of students indicate that they were either formerly incarcerated or they faced the impacts of a collateral consequence of a criminal conviction. So many of them told me that they felt as though they were alone on campus because they have this experience that they're trying to keep away from everybody else because they don't want to be judged during their rehabilitation process. And a question that I would often have for these students is, what kind of resources have been made available to you? Who have you gone to for resources? And what I realized was there was a tremendous amount of talented faculty and staff on campus, But many of these talented faculty and staff members believe that due to this lived experience that they can't help in the way that they want to help with students. And this narrative became common for me. And although I've never been incarcerated myself, I do share the experience of facing collateral consequences of a cannabis conviction. So I took it upon myself to start mentoring and advising students at the undergraduate and graduate level that had this background, because our campus fosters diversity, we foster inclusion, and we want people to feel valued regardless of their lived experience. So I tried to do the best I could from my own experience, but also from things that I learned as a student navigating graduate school, whether it was at the master's level or the doctoral level. So from my own personal playbook, I would tell students with a justice impacted background, I found this to be helpful. I found something else maybe not to be as helpful. I tell them about the various resources that we have on campus, whether it's CAPS for counseling services, for individuals that are food insecure, I let them know about the food bank that we have. And I just let them know about other resources that the university offers. We have tremendous resources in terms of finances. So some students may be in a financial hardship. So I help them navigate to the applications that would allow them to receive additional forms of financial aid. And over the course of the past few years, I noticed that this mentoring and advising helped with the retention, progression, and ultimately the completion of these justice impacted students. And so I was seeking greater help from the university. And again, we have lots of people that want to help, but the idea was to create something concrete where students can go and seek assistance in a centralized location. And so I've been privileged to meet a number of students that are currently in the mentoring program. Askia Talib-Dean, Kevin Wong, Dawn Hansen. And with my interactions with these students, we're collaborating in terms of creating a set of best practices that our faculty and staff and our Justice Impacted Task Force can use to help students that come from this specific demographic. So we all have very different experiences, but we share the identity of the justice impacted student. So it's a collaborative effort that we have here. It's not singular in nature. There's no one spokesperson. We all bring something unique to the table. And there are certain things that we can help help students that need certain resources or certain words of encouragement that some of us can't provide. So that's the idea, is to create a body of people that can help the justice impacted community. And our idea is to grow this, to allow more people to realize that they're not alone, that there are people out there that help them, and there are people that share a similar identity. And we will ultimately want to help them succeed, graduate, and become successful, gainfully employed members of our community. So in a nutshell, that's my take on the Justice Impacted Task Force, what I hope to bring, and a little bit about my background. You're muted, Dr. Barlow.
Kevin, when we talk about justice impacted, what does that mean? I mean, a lot of people will listen to this and or, seeing it now, or will see it in the future and hear more about the things that we're doing. What do you, when we talk about justice impacted, what does that mean? How does that translate?
Just to be clear, you asked me.
Go
Okay.
ahead, Kevin.
There's a lot of different ways that the justice system. Oh, can somebody distracted?
Yeah.
There's a lot of different ways that people can be impacted by the justice system. Like, first and foremost, there are the folks that are directly impacted. They've either received a direct conviction and therefore have been consequently receiving the social stigmatization, like from having the criminal conviction. But there are also individuals who their family members were impacted by the justice system. Like I think we all know about folks who have like intergenerational trauma from either their parents or their brothers or their sisters or their aunts, uncles, grandparents being incarcerated by the justice system, and the impacts that has on individual psyches, especially within their particular families, and how certain demographics are impacted more than others, or certain or just there are a lot of different impacts that can have on an individual, and having this like initiative, like it's really important to establish this dialogue and to have this community of folks that can sort of like break that down on who's impacted by the justice system and how are these common threads, especially like in the university community, and how we can build a community and make the students succeed.
Thank you. I guess I want to ask Curtin Elgin the same question from your vantage point. What do we mean by justice impacted, and particularly justice impacted students? Kirk, do you want to take this?
Sure. I want to say good morning. I want to thank Jason too for asking me to be a part of this initiative. What does it mean? To me, it's the intersection of people and the intersection with the prison industrial complex. I think they're calling it now that because it has so many arms. I've been navigating this thing for some time now as a formerly incarcerated person. So definitely when someone talks about the alienation, I'm sorry, when somebody talks about the alienation that one experienced, I know that. I apologize for that. I want to share one story with the participants and the guests that I took part in a class that was called the School to Prison Pipeline. That was the theme. And it was the most painful thing I had to go through, hearing everybody theorize about the School to Prison Pipeline and it being a lived reality for me. That eventually made me just come out and say, hey, this is my experience. So, but I never really needed the resources. I just needed someone to engage with that would even listen. Just imagine going through it and there's no one you can talk to. So that's what I don't want anyone to have to experience that like I did. And that's what I'm there for, just to give somebody an ear and to help them navigate that ivory tower, which is a journey of its own. So that's what that means to me. Excuse me.
Elgin?
Good morning. As far as justice impacted, to me personally, I look at it in a sense where I'm taking it personal and one-on-one, where you want others to know, especially that have been impacted, that you're not alone and that we are all in this together, or I too feel this way, or this is how I handle the circumstances of some of my past decision, or we do have some rights. I think it's just vitally important that others know that that you're that what you're going through, or I'm going through, or I have gone through, and that allows you to push forward. Sometimes when you're just doing something on your own, you're just frightened, and you may not have answers. All of us are in different aspects of this race. Some of us at the beginning, some of us in the middle, some of us at the end, and this is how we help one another. And this is kind of like how I look at it. I look at it more on a personal, linking up with someone who's going through it, maybe where you at, or maybe a little bit before, a little bit behind you, and you can help them. And we link up together, come together, and we're stronger in numbers.
Well, based upon some of the things that all of you have said, it seems like that prior to this initiative happening here on campus, that you were doing it on your own, right? As students, you were reaching out to each other, or by conversation you would find, or students would find out that they had this commonality, if you will. But now, I mean, we have this initiative here that it's a task force But some of the things that we've been able to do just simply as a task force was to develop a website that would give some level of visibility to the initiative. Certainly, the intersection here is happy to be a point of contact for justice impacted students. That's not to say that we have all of the answers or all of the resources, but we are a source of contact to be able to try to assist students who who are justice impacted. The other thing that we've been doing over the course of the last couple of semesters is actually going to various departments, faculty senate, colleges, and doing an actual presentation to members of the faculty and other entities here on campus about the initiative, and just to be able to raise awareness that we do have students who are justice impacted, and because of that, there are things that we need to be aware of and or put in place to help these students navigate. The other thing that I'm excited about is the Justice Impacted Institute that will be going on next month. It's a 3-day, I believe, institute that is going to be facilitated by Jason Bell. That's correct. Am I right about that, Jason? Jason Bell out of California, who is going to actually be engaged in this facilitation of an institute where we as a university and university personnel can actually learn and to put together programmatic efforts to assist students. So I'm really excited about that. I think that is going to be very helpful as we all move forward in this initiative and learning what we don't know from a university perspective, right? Learning what we don't know and figuring out what it is that we can in fact do to assist. So as a student, what would you like to see, from the university? What is it that you would like to be able to see us do? If you had this huge, beautiful wish list, at the top of that wish list, what would be there, Jason? What would be at the top of that wish list?
It's hard to put one at the top, but I would say I would put 2 or 3 things at the top of my wish list. The first is mentoring and advising for those from the justice impacted community. I want to make it very clear and have no mistakes about it. First and foremost, we are academics and scholars. There might be something in our background that's not shared, but what we all have in common is the socialization process as academics in the community. So when a student comes for advice or mentoring, don't feel discouraged and that you can't do something for the student, because a criminal conviction is not a master status that we embrace. Again, first and foremost, we're scholars, we're academics. So treat us as one. Provide what you can from your perspective, and we can always look for other individuals that perhaps can fill in gaps that you feel as though you may not be able to provide as a mentor. But feeling that I can't help you because I don't identify in the same way, and not moving beyond that point, I think it's counterproductive. I think when a student comes and demonstrates their vulnerability, they're outing themselves in many cases, they're seeking help, and not providing that help, that may be the last time the student seeks help in that situation. They may not go to anybody else. So at the top of the list, don't be afraid to provide advising and mentoring. And the second thing at the top of the list I would suggest is career counseling and placement. The collateral consequences of a criminal conviction makes it very difficult for some students from this demographic to obtain gainful employment. And I think when we prove our worth in the classroom, and I can tell you that many individuals that I've come across have had several university-wide accolades, from outstanding PhD student awards to being elected members of student government to being community activists. We bring a skill set, I think, that can be utilized not just by our campus community, but by other, whether it's businesses in the private or public sector in our community. So help provide career services in the sense of linking us with individuals that can tap into our lived experience and the knowledge that we bring that someone that hasn't gone down the same path doesn't have. And then the third wish list item that I have at the top is to provide grants and scholarships to individuals that are justice impacted. There's a lot of erroneous information, and I'm not saying this is UNLV, I'm talking higher education wide across the country. There's the belief that if you have a criminal conviction, in particularly a controlled substance conviction, you cannot receive financial aid, whether it's at the federal or state level. We need to shatter that stereotype because it's blatantly false, it's incorrect. And students that are seeking to enter into the academy, one of their first stops is to call a financial aid office. And if they're getting that bad information, that stops their journey in the tracks. So we need to get the word out that there are forms of financial aid, and it would be nice to have a dedicated scholarship or graduate assistantship or undergraduate assistantship for our students. So for me, those are the three things at the top of my wish list for this community.
You mentioned myths, right? You talked about the ability to get financial aid or not to be able to get financial aid is a big myth. Kevin, what do you think is another big myth potentially about this particular student demographic, or that is a hindrance to justice impacted students?
I'm trying to think for a second about other myths, but I just want to build on top of something that Jason spoke about with the financial aid scenario. 2016, November 7th, I was exiting state prison and I was getting ready to go back to school. Thinking about it for like the past X number of months. Yeah, when I get out, I'm going to go to school. And there's all this information being proliferated within the community about, like, what I can and cannot have. Like, oh, you're a felon, you cannot have financial aid. Oh, you're a felon, you cannot vote. Oh, so my first instinct when I went back to school is I'm immediately at a setback. Because nobody wants to, under my circumstances, nobody wanted to hire me. Like, I think on my first job application when I came home, I had to lie on my application and check off, no, I do not have a felony, because how else was I going to pay my bills? How else was I going to survive? So I spent I paid for my first semester with no financial aid. And I was cleaning toilets and mopping floors and taking out garbage at a day spa. And only to find out later, and I remember going to the financial aid office at the community college I was attending in New Jersey, and I had asked the person at the desk, and I was really shy about asking them. I was like, hey, I'm a felon. Am I going to be eligible for financial aid? And this person didn't ask anybody else in the office. They just made one of these faces like, ooh, and how do I feel under that circumstance? Like, I was not, wasn't an academic in those circumstances. I hadn't really taken any classes. So I'm looking at this person as a person of authority, and they're looking down on me immediately. But these are like sort of things that happen not only like, within the academic sphere, but they also happen like, there's still folks here in Nevada right now who think that they will never have their voting rights back. And those are a lot of the stigmas that we face as people who have been directly impacted by the justice system that we need to start breaking down, especially within communities of folks like us who have been impacted and who do know like what is right and what is wrong.
So based upon what you're saying, I mean, there's a lot, right? You know, whether we're talking about mentoring, support, accurate information, and these are all things that students in particular who have been justice impacted need, right? Um, so if I know of a student, or if I am a student who's justice impacted, and I'd like to be able to reach out, particularly to the mentoring group, how do I do that? You know, what or what needs to be done so that the students know that the mentoring group in particular is in existence, and then as a result of that, there are other programmatic and or support systems like the intersection, like SDSJ, like others, right, that are there. Elgin, what are your thoughts on that?
Man, I would love that. I remember when I first came back to school, and I was just lost, and I had so many questions, and but I didn't know who I can talk to, or what I can say, or would I be stereotyped after speaking. And it was just really, really horrible. I was very, very fortunate where a couple doors opened with a couple professors where I just felt like I was allowed to speak. I'm one to like not speak unless I feel that the door is open. And going back to your previous conversation, you spoke on something that's huge that we need, and that is the counseling. And I had a professor who, and my bachelor was in criminal justice as a criminal. A lot of people laugh at that past criminal, and so that professor had told me, it was like, okay, you can continue to do this. However, it would be limited. And I think maybe you should go, with another route with your master's, and kind of pointed me in that direction. And that was great. But a person needs that, because there are certain fields that you graduate in where it's very, very, very limited if you have a past conviction. Going back to my brother Kevin, he spoke on, it's just things that we don't know when we first come out, and you always hear it. I was told again, I was told that you couldn't vote. And the thing about it, and it was like that. But there's some yes and some no. But like, we had a rule that passed in 1919, and when it came into effect last year, and is that we can vote. However, the stipulations is that you must not you have to be all the way cleared on what you owe. Because a lot of times past criminals or past felons, we're given not just a sentence, but a fine. So you have to be cleared all the way across the board to be able to vote. And then I was told I would never get a passport. And I just sat around for a couple of years. And one day, one of my brothers said, man, just do it, man. And I did. And 6 weeks later, a passport came in the mail. And I'm like, it was just so many things that I was just told. Uh, so, and then I was told you have to register as a felon. Not all crimes you have to register as a felon. It's just so many things that we don't know. And so a class would be something like that, as you suggesting, would be powerful, because it's just so many things you don't know, especially when you come out and you're just so raw. And then you're able to, like, love on one of your brothers and sisters, and let them know that, okay, this is true, but this isn't true, and these are the routes that you have to take if you want to improve on that. I guess I don't know how to go about doing that aspect of it. My job would be in the sense where, if we had it, I can play my part in a huge role. But as far as making it known and all of that, that would be, I guess, someone in your position.
I just want to clarify something really quickly, because I was part of the lobbying arm that helped that pushed for that bill to pass, Assembly Bill 431, the voting rights bill. And that's another rumor that we have in there, that you have to pay all of your fines. Now, the clear stipulation under the under the bill is that as long as you are not incarcerated, as long as you can even be on probation or parole, as long as you are not within a carceral institution, a jail, a prison, you're eligible to vote now in the state of Nevada. Just had to clear that up. You're on mute.
I'm always on mute, right? Thank you for providing that information. I mean, obviously, it's very clear that there's a lot of different information, misinformation that's out there, right? And I think that when we look at it from a university perspective, some of the things that you were talking about specifically deal with like career development or majors. You know, what majors can you go into that will allow you to have a job when you're finishing up? And so I kind of like to throw this one to Kurt, since you're finishing up with your PhD, what, in a couple, how many weeks and counting do we have? You know, how do you
No.
navigate that? I mean, what is it that how do you navigate that? And what is it that, from a university's perspective, that we can do to help you navigate it?
For me, and my peers and colleagues know this about me, first and foremost, the education is about dealing with the trauma. You can find me a job, but if I haven't dealt with those issues, then I may end up going back, or I won't be any good to any company anyway. I really want to go back to my wish list. It would be recruitment. Everything we're talking about takes place on the campus. What about those whose trauma don't even send them to the campus? If I wouldn't have had this mentor, I probably would have never even thought about school. I mean, some people still have when I say this is a reality, they equate school with whiteness. So they're dealing with that trauma. So we have to, I think, take the school to them and correct, like you guys said, the myths. That was so important, because I'm still dealing with the myths, what we can and can't do, what we think we can and can't do. But you know, we can, and this is not a lot for me when I say this. No doubt we have responsibilities and we need to get people jobs or vocations, but we need to get people educated enough to go up in there and challenge policies and things like that, make policies. That's what I'm looking for when I teach as an adjunct. All my students, 99% of them are saying they're just there to get a job. And I always say, well, who's here? Who's going to run the country? Nobody wants to go up in Congress. That's what I'm promoting, an education that does that. But so, like I say, first and foremost, our education has to be about dealing with the trauma that got us in prison in most cases, you know. So that's why I think education should be. And I always am a proponent of that.
Okay. Well, we certainly do have our work cut out for us, right? But I think that we here at UNLV in general, and certainly with you all's help and support and even challenge, that we will, you know, meet that task and meet that challenge, because otherwise we wouldn't even be here. We wouldn't be having this conversation. And in recognition that it is something that we need to be aware of, that we need to be able to support and to provide support to our students who are justice impacted. I know that you all have talked about your own personal experiences, right? And I appreciate that. I appreciate that vulnerability and that openness and candidness. And I'm hoping that those who are viewing now and who will view this video will see that and be thankful for it. I think that as I think about my own journey in this particular process, one of the things that Jason, that you said very early on was about how we oftentimes don't consider or even think about some of the issues that justice impacted students may face, right, as even they relate to being in the classroom. You know, such as, you know, if you've got to meet with a probation officer or court date or something of that nature, and feeling being able to feel okay about telling an instructor or professor that this is a conflict that you have, and that kind of a thing. And so I know that made an impression on me, right? You know, when you talked about that. And for that reason, right, I'm really happy that the intersection is here, because if we are looking at being this point of contact for justice impacted students, then we can do for these students the same thing we do for any students, and that is to either, you know, intervene, you know, be a forerunner, you know, and that kind of a thing on behalf of students. And so I want to just make sure that, particularly as you all are continuing to develop your mentoring program, that the intersection, that we are here, you know, to assist and to help, and more importantly, to partner. Because we, you know, we understand, and I understand that students are only able to do so much, right? And that's the reason why you've got offices and individuals like the intersection and myself and others who are here to help you move that needle. And you don't have to do that all by yourself, right? And I think that that's important to know. I think that that is important to for those folks who are out there listening and or who will listen, to know that we're in this together, and we're here to help, and we're also here to learn, because I certainly don't know. As I said before, I don't know what I don't know, but we're really willing to learn and to listen, and don't want students to have that experience like you had, Kevin. It's like, oh my goodness gracious, my good, you know, we can't have that, right? Our motto here is, while I don't know is an answer, it is not the final answer, and it is not the answer that we will leave away with. Is let me find out, and let me find out how we can help. So I am really appreciative of you all joining on this call today, or on this pop-up fair about justice impacted students. And we only have a few minutes left, right? But I want to just open it up if anybody wants to have any kind of final words or any final thoughts, to just, you know, let it ride. And on the description of this particular video, I will put the links in for the Justice Impacted website, as well as the institute that we talked about earlier that's happening in May on campus. So any final thoughts?
Let me say one thing, and then Dr. Barlow, I just want to reiterate what you just said, and Jason spoke on it earlier. We have to create, and this is for really any student, we have to create an environment where people can be emotionally vulnerable. And I'm still learning, that takes time. Professors, adjuncts still don't know this, and we're not even dealing with, you know, students that have been impacted. But we have to first create a relationship where a person can say, hey, this is me, and be comfortable. I guess that's trust I'm talking about. So that emotional vulnerability is very important.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
I would like to plug the intersection. So if anybody is watching this, whether they are impacted in a direct sense or indirectly impacted because of a loved one that went through the criminal justice system, and they need a support group or they need resources, I encourage you to contact the intersection. Dr. Barlow will make sure that you are put in touch with the appropriate people. You could also contact Student Diversity and Social Justice. You can Google Justice Impacted UNLV and a link will come up. You can also contact any members that you see here on the video today, where we're happy to assist any way that we can. And if there's something that we can't provide, we'll be sure to put you in touch with the appropriate people that can provide the resources, not only that you need, but more importantly, that you deserve. And the final thing is, I want to give a little shout out to Kevin and Dawn Hansen. They are our communications team for the the Justice Impacted Mentoring Group. They are putting things together for social media. So the Facebook, the Twitter, the TikTok presence. So we're getting the word out in a variety of formats. So just Google us and you'll find us on your favorite platform somewhere.
I love that. That's good to know.
Some of those things will be pending after finals. So stand by and wait. They'll be coming.
Well, I want to thank you all for joining us for this 3 for 3 mini pop-up resource fair virtually, talking about justice impacted students and the initiatives that we have going on here at the university. I also want to thank you for not only being here today, but also being willing to be a part of how that task force moves and what we do and what we focus on. Because certainly we can't be successful if we don't hear your voices and your issues and your concerns. As a reminder, I want to say the Institute information will be posted in the description of this video once we go off today. So you'll have that, and we're hoping that those of you who are here listening to us will plan to join that institute that will be held in May. And I also want to once again reach out to anyone who feels that they are in need of any kind of support to make sure that they contact the intersection, as well as some of those other resources that Jason talked about earlier. Without any further ado, I just want to say thank you all for listening this afternoon. And we will be back next semester with the second rendition of the 3 for 3 pop-up fair. We hope it will not be virtual. We'll hope to be able to see everyone in person. Thank you for attending. Talk with you later. Okay. Thank you. Thank you so